I was just coughing before I made this video, so I might start coughing again. I drank some water and it went down the wrong tube. You know how that goes. So I'm not exactly sure if this is the right route to go, but I'm just going to talk a little bit about past lives and what I know about past lives just through my own experience. I never thought about past lives before I got into energy healing and my own sort of growth work. It had never been a belief that I had that we have past lives. I didn't really think that way. I didn't think of multiple lives or much of that at all. But in 2019, my brother died, and I sort of was opened up to a whole new way of thinking and seeing life and seeing death. I read the book called Your Soul's Journey by Michael Newton, and that started to answer a lot of things for me and made a lot of sense to me too. It just felt really right. Somewhere in that year, I think 2019, I did might have been even in 2020, so not too long ago, because I'm making this video September 2022. I'm not sure when you're going to watch this, but it wasn't too long ago, only a couple years ago, when I had my first past life experience, or at least my first explicit, is that the right word? Past life experience. I'm not sure if that's the right word. But I did a meditation that was about an hour long, and I got a bunch of information about a past life. And it was the first time I had ever, like I said, seen a past life of mine, but it was a profound experience. And it really helped me for the next year in my healing and development. And in this past life, I went into kind of somewhat of a hypnotic state. It was through a guided meditation that I followed, and I was taken into a hypnotic state. And from there, these images and memories just started unfolding. And what I saw was really relevant to what I was working on consciously in my life at the time. It was a life where I committed suicide at the end of the life at a young age, but I lived a pretty terrible life in suffering and in regret and guilt and shame. And I felt at the end of my life that I had done so much harm to so many people and betrayed so many people that I was too shameful to try to improve my life or get out of the situation that I was in. And so ultimately, that self-destruction was the only answer that I had in my mind and in that life. And what seeing that past life showed me was that this life, I was able to help people. And in this life, I am not a slave, because I was pretty much a slave in those days. And I just lived a life of tragedy. But what I saw in experiencing that past life again was that this life is not a life of tragedy. It's one where I can actually choose happiness and be in peace and love and happiness, because this life is so much different from that previous life. And the way that I can impact people is in such a more positive way, and I can really be a positive influence to many people's lives rather than cause them harm, which I had done unintentionally in the first life, or the first past life regression that I ever experienced. So that past life gave me a lot of information, and I felt like it really catapulted me into a new way of thinking about this life and the purpose that I have here. Up until that point, I had never really understood all the reasons why I seem to suffer or choose suffering or hold on to this story of I'm not able to help people or I'm not good enough. It really showed me that a lot of those patterns and ways of thinking were from an old way of being in a previous life that I had still just held on to, and now I could let go. So that was the first experience that I had personally. And then I had another past life, quick vision when I was doing my own meditation once, and it was on my brother's, would it have been his angel day that he passed away, and I got a quick scenes of our life together and just that we were friends, and it was just a really nice experience. It wasn't anything in depth, it was really more of just a remembrance of him and how many lives we must have incarnated together. But I wanted to talk about how past lives, to me, are very important because they will explain why we hold on to certain patterns, certain belief systems, certain energy within our body, experiences that we've had, or relationships that we've had in a past life can greatly influence our current life. And we may not realize how impactful that time is if we don't consciously pull up that memory and or take that energy that's stored in the body or stored in our energetic body and bring it to the surface. If we don't do that, then we could be influenced by a past life without even knowing it. So since that first regression, I've had a lot of other experiences with past lives, some just as profound as that one, and other ones just quick images going through. But even in my energy healing sessions, many times there will be information from a past life come up for my client, and we work through that because it helps them understand why they're holding on to a pattern currently, or why they're being influenced in a way they don't really understand. It can be really useful to know about your past lives so you get a clearer picture of what you're meant to do now and what you're meant to let go of. Past lives can also be, there's a lot of karma connected to past lives. Things that you might have worked on in the past are corrected now, so you can move through lessons more easily or not repeat the same sort of mistakes or patterns that aren't really helpful to your growth. But they can also, past lives aren't just about being negative influences. There's also aspects of the energetic imprint on a soul that can be really helpful to know about. So I had a past life experience recently, just a couple days ago, and that's why I haven't made videos the past few days, because I was focused on this other type of healing, and there wasn't really space for me within myself to be making YouTube videos. But past lives can show us aspects of ourselves that we might have forgotten that are meant to be remembered. They can be very positive and healing to remember and own. So you might have been a female or a male, you might have been an animal, depending on how evolved or new, I guess I should say, your soul is. But we've all, let me start over. I believe we've all been animals and other forms of life before being human. And whether or not, depending on how many lives you've had, you might have had thousands and thousands of lives as a human, or maybe it's more of a more new experience being human. There's other life forms, of course, above being human, but from what I understand, having a human life it can be very challenging because a human body is operating at such a lower frequency than our soul's energy. And so it can be really challenging for us as a spiritual light being to have a body and incorporate our soul self into this human experience. Earth also is really challenging. There's a lot of pain and hardship and hard lessons. That's why they call it Earth School, right? So it can be really a hard place to be. But we're meant to be here to heal our soul's energy and overcome things and grow and expand and contribute to the world. That's truly what I believe. But as I was saying, with every past life, an aspect of that life might hang on to the energetic body, onto the soul's imprint, onto the soul's energy. So after thousands and thousands of life as a human, that soul might carry on different aspects of those different lives, even though technically we heal from each life and we go back and remove a lot of those imprints. There's still memories and energetic imprints that last. And so I think that explains, and I think this is really interesting, why sometimes we have I feel like I've said this before, Maybe it was with a client, but maybe it was in a YouTube video. That's why sometimes we can't explain why we're so drawn to a certain country or something that, without us realizing it, it subconsciously reminds us of a past life. I know someone who's very interested in Chinese culture and language, and this person has never been to China, has never done anything really related to China, but they're just so drawn to the language and culture and have really pursued learning more about that simply out of a deep-seated interest that has been with this person since childhood. I would guess that that person who I'm talking about, and intentionally being vague just for privacy, I would guess that that person has had a past life where they were in China or grew up in that culture with those ways, and probably it was a significant life. It could have been negative, like a hard life, or it could have been a very good life. And I mean, most likely it's mixed with good and bad, but it could have been a life where the person realized themselves and their potential, or maybe they were working to self-realize in that life. I'm not sure. But if you have these unexplained interests or deep connections to something, there's a really good chance that there was a past life where you spent a lot of time in that environment. Yeah, so even, a profession that you've been drawn to might resemble a profession that you had in a past life, or a role that you played in a past life. So a lot of times we gravitate towards things that feel familiar because of this connection to a previous life. And that's really all I wanted to talk about today. Oh, well, the other thing I was going to say is, because past lives are held energetically in our bodies and minds and sort of on a spiritual level, when we do past life work, when past life information comes up in an energy session, let's say, or you get access to a big memory of a past life, or the story the story of that past life, it can really take a toll on a person emotionally or mentally and physically, because it's energy work. So without getting into detail about what came up for me, I was at I think the last video I did, I told you I was going to a retreat, and it was an energy healing retreat where everyone experienced different levels of energy healing. There was meditation involved. There were other sorts of exercises to increase the vibration and awareness within each individual. But I had a profound memory of a past life, and I also had a different big energy release from a different past life. And one was very positive and light feeling, and another one was very hard and heavy feeling. And the things that were like around both of those experiences were very different, but they both were very significant. And so the reason why I wanted to make this video is I realized how tired I am and how exhausted I feel, and even a little bit lifeless. And thankfully I know that this is part of the integration process. When you do energy work, it's not always easy. It's not always light and happy-go-lucky right afterwards. It can take a few days to integrate and process. Your body's processing it, your higher self, and like on a spiritual level, you're processing it. And anytime we release something energetically, it can influence these different levels, the physical, the mental, the emotional levels of ourselves. So I think it's important to know that when we do energy work, to not have expectations of how it's going to look and how it's going to feel right after. And so that's why it's important, and I know this from my own mentor and just from doing this and being in this space long enough, that when we have energy work, when we do energy work, we have to be really gentle with ourselves and try to not make big decisions in those next few days or week from the energy healing, because a lot is shifting and changing and processing and releasing still after the session or after the experience. So I just wanted to remind you that energy healing is multi-leveled. It's going to impact you, maybe even physically. You could be very tired, you could be sore, you can have an upset stomach, you can feel an excess of energy. It could be hard to sleep, or you might want to sleep all the time. You might cry, and there's that emotional piece of not knowing or understanding why you're so emotional, but just know that the energy work is going to impact you in other ways and continue even beyond when the session ends. So that's sort of where I am right now, is I'm just giving myself a lot of permission to just feel the things that are coming up, totally accept that I feel a little down and slow. I feel a little out of it. That's, you know, that's part of what can happen. It's always I think wise to not have expectations when you've done energy work, and to be very gentle with yourself. All right, so that's my little video for today, and feel free to subscribe to this channel. I'm always talking about stuff, and I have yet to understand what is it that I'm talking about. Well, you can go and look at my previous videos to get a feel for what this channel has, what specifically this playlist has. But if you want to get notified about the next video, which I will be doing tomorrow, because I will be back on my daily YouTube video posting, go ahead and subscribe, and feel free to share this channel or my information with anyone who you think it would benefit. I'll talk to you later. Bye.